Now, the third topic of this module is sustain improvements. Sustaining improvement is such an important thing because we don't want to go back or relapse to the previous status. So, how do we sustain improvements in control phase? First thing that I want to mention is post-mortem analysis. In other words, this is a lesson learned from the failure or success that has to be documented and written and shared with others. One of the last project closure steps is the post-mortem analysis. This review is often a formal and documented critique conducted by a committee of qualified company personnel, which often include Six Sigma professionals. The review process is often established by management policy as well. The membership and responsibilities in a project review will vary considerably, but having it is such a help because it tells about how well the project was tracked, how well the team performance was done together, and effectiveness of actions, and those things can be discussed and memorized, celebrated, or improved upon. And how do we judge whether a project or process improvement is a success or failure? The three things that we can look at is the goal and time and cost. In terms of goal, were the specified goals and objectives achieved? We can ask that question, and you have from um, module one, the goal statement, project charter there, and you can compare that with your improvement and see whether the improvement goal or outcome is meeting or exceeding the initial goal. In terms of time, was it achieved within the time deadline? If somebody set the deadline as 3 months, was it done? Cost, was the project at or below cost constraints? If it is incurring too much cost, that can be problematic too. However, remember that it is possible to be a success yet be late, over budget, or missing a few objectives. So we cannot just methodologically sticking to this goal and time cost, but prioritize what is more important and achieve that. Here's a quick question. The most important determination of a post-mortem project analysis is A, whether the project was achieved within the time deadlines. B, the effectiveness of the entire project. C, how well the project team was recognized for their efforts. D, whether the project was completed within the cost constraint. These are all important. However, most important thing is the effectiveness of the entire project, right? So remember the last point that I mentioned. Now, training plan deployment. Training is the process aimed at improving the skills and expanding the knowledge of employees. Training provides very specific employee development intended to close the gap between current and desired abilities. Um, uh, for process improvement, truly for it to take place, both formal learning and practical knowledge should be communicated and shared broadly with a company. Um, the following strategies can be considered. Build a robust curriculum and provide a means for people to interact, exploit technology, and document and share best practices. By doing these four practices, you can spread the enthusiasm toward process improvement and celebrate and is spread to other employees as well. Cross training is also important because employees always to learn and improve themselves, and learning other functions of business or team or company can be a tremendous help and collaboration efforts too. Employees must be made aware of the benefits of the process changes, otherwise they will be unmotivated to learn and make progress toward that. Here are the questions. When a new process change is introduced in an area, what is the most critical element in the successful implementation of the change. Um, the most important thing is training. So A is the answer. Now take a look at documentation. Documentation is also important because after going through a process improvement project or analytical work, the lessons have to be commemorated and shared with other people as well. Also, if there was a success, somebody can benchmark on it and learn from it and adopt and implement that in another department in a different setting. And for that purpose, having a documentation can be of tremendous help. And it could be a living history of the company, and it accumulates and it becomes a knowledge of the organization, even tested and explicit knowledge of the company. So that's why it's really important. And here's the cycle. Implement a process and evaluate process and improve process and then document that learning and then it goes back to implementing process later. So this cycle keeps on going. Question: to what level should organizational documentation be written? A, to the level that is understood by the users. B, to the level that it complies with applicable standards. C, to the level that it will be audited to. D, to the level that makes it easy to revise in the future. The answer is A. To make it a living document, it should be understood by the users and accessible to everyone. In conclusion of this control phase, we learned several things. First, control phase is essential to maintain and sustain the improvements and prepare for further process innovation. Control phase should be taken seriously and well planned and implemented. Second, statistical process control chart can be expensive, but when in place allows a company to monitor and predict each process closely. That's why it is being used, and there are so many kinds of them, and we learned that. Third, total productive maintenance is necessary to get ready for best performance at all times. And we don't want to be dragged by uh, you know, unsharpened productive maintenance. The fourth lesson that we can learn from this is to sustain improvements, lessons should be documented and shared, and employees need to be trained continually. Those are the things that we learned from this control phase. I hope you enjoyed this lecture and learned a lot about control phase, and thank you for your attention.